It was a moment I never expected. My fiancé, the man I trusted, had crossed a line I could never imagine. I had just turned 25, already a mother to my 2-year-old son from a previous relationship, and I thought things were moving forward in a way that made sense. But then, one fateful night, everything shifted. It all started when my fiancé brought up having a baby. "I want to start a family," he said. At first, I agreed. Eventually, I wanted more children too. But not right now. Not while I wasn't ready. I had an implant in my arm, a birth control that was supposed to last for 3 years. I had planned to remove it when the time was right, but he didn't want to wait. He wanted it now. And that's when the argument began. He got mad, really mad, insisting we could expand our family right away. But I stood firm. My son already needed so much of our attention, and I wasn't ready to take on more. I wanted stability, financial stability, emotional stability. But all he could see was his desire for a child of his own. I had to remind him of the child we already had, the one who saw him as a father figure. That's when it hit, the words he said next. Every time I look at him, I just get angry. He looked at my son, my little boy, and saw nothing but his ex. His biological father, who my son looked so much like. And then, the hurtful words came pouring out. He didn't feel like a father to my son. He resented that my son wasn't his flesh and blood. He was angry that he didn't have a child to call his own, so much so that he wanted to get rid of my birth control immediately. I told him no. I wasn't ready. And in that moment, I was exhausted from fighting, from the frustration of not being understood. So, I went to bed. But there was something he didn't know about me. I take strong medication to help me sleep. When I take it, I'm out like a light. It knocks me out cold. But as I lay there, drifting into a deep sleep, I felt something, fingers, on my upper arm. At first, I thought it was just him being petty, but no, it wasn't that. His fingers pressed harder, right onto the spot where my implant was. I stirred, irritated, still half asleep. "Stop poking me," I mumbled. But then, my eyes shot open as I felt something sharp in his hand. A box cutter. A box cutter. Right next to my skin, where the implant was. My heart stopped. I asked him, horrified, what he was doing. He immediately looked guilty, trying to make excuses, saying he was just trying to scare me or checking to make sure I was alive because, holding a sharp object near my arm was a great way to do that. But then he dropped the bombshell. He said he was doing me a favor. He had studied how to remove my implant himself. He was confident he could do it. He wanted to start our family, now. No need to wait. Now. The anger, the disbelief, I couldn't even think straight. I screamed at him to get away from me. "Don't touch me." He tried to talk, tried to explain himself, but I didn't want to hear it. I wanted him gone. I told him to leave. He had crossed the line. He had broken my trust in a way I couldn't even comprehend. He left. And I didn't know what to do. He didn't come back for 3 hours, and I was left in a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and hurt. My mind was spinning. Was this the man I loved? Could I forgive him for what he'd done? I knew I had to leave. So I packed my son's things, called my mom, and told her I needed to stay with her. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I could ever go back to him, if I could ever trust him again. I loved him, but how could I reconcile the sweet man I knew with the one I had seen that night? The next morning, my phone was buzzing. Texts, calls, voicemails. "Where are you? When are you coming home?" I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to talk to him. My mom answered one of his calls. He asked her where I was, what was going on. But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't face him. I didn't know what to say. I had to leave. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing, I couldn't go back to that. The air felt thick, a mixture of confusion, fear, and disbelief swirling in every breath. I couldn't understand what was happening. My ex's voice was on the phone, frantic, panicked, as if the world was crashing down around him. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Where's my son?" There was no mention of the fight, no acknowledgement of what had just transpired. He sounded scared, but was he really? Or was it just a manipulation? He asked my mom when she last heard from me, and I could hear his frustration, a heavy sigh escaping him. He didn't even ask if I was okay, not truly. Instead, he said he was going to keep searching for us. The words hit me like a slap to the face. He was worried. Was he worried for us, or was it just about control? The phone call ended, and my mom wrapped me in a hug, probably because she could feel the tension radiating from me. She knew I'd been crying, even though I hadn't realized it. She was my rock, and now she was here, holding me as I fell apart. Then, she asked me the question I had been avoiding. "Do you want to be done with him for good?" I nodded. I knew, deep down, that this was the end. I could never go back to that person, the one who had held a box cutter to my skin. She nodded too, and without wasting any time, she guided me forward. "First, you need to go to the police." And that's what we did. I had no proof of the box cutter incident. Nothing but my word. If he had even just nicked me, I would have had a case, but as it stood, it was his word against mine. The detective I spoke to was blunt. "I've seen cases like this thrown out," he said. The hopelessness almost swallowed me whole. But then, he mentioned an ex parte order, something I could get to protect myself and my son. I didn't waste another second. I went to the courthouse with my mom, detailing everything that had happened, even the smallest details, all while my heart pounded in my chest. Next, I called my landlord, putting in my 30-day notice. My home of 2 years. It had been mine, ours, until now. But now, it was just another casualty in this nightmare. I told him briefly what was going on, then moved on to the utilities. Water, electricity, internet, all canceled. I needed to be free, to take back control of my life. "What about your stuff?" My mom's voice broke through my thoughts. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave everything behind, all my personal things, papers, clothes, furniture. It all had to go. And that's when my mom suggested a storage unit. We needed to get the ball rolling. My brothers agreed to help, even suggesting police presence during the move. I wasn't sure what that was exactly, civil standby, but I didn't question it. By the time the day had worn on, I was emotionally drained. I needed rest. I just wanted to curl up with my son, find some peace, even if it was only temporary. Then, the county clerk called. The ex parte order had been granted. I was relieved, but also scared. It wasn't over yet. The court date was set, but my ex would soon be served the papers. I was told I didn't have to see him again until then, but that didn't make it any easier. I was told to hire a lawyer, but honestly, I couldn't think about anything else at that moment. I was burned out. I just needed to hold my son and breathe. I know a lot of people wonder why I didn't leave right when the verbal abuse started. Why I stayed in the fight, why I didn't just walk away. To be honest, I didn't know what to do. A part of me thought it was just anger. His words didn't match the man I thought I knew. I thought maybe he didn't mean them. He had told my son he loved him before, right? The shock of hearing it, the disbelief, made me freeze. I couldn't understand why he would say such hateful things. It didn't make sense. He'd never hurt me before. He'd never raised a hand to my son. So, maybe it was just a heated moment. Maybe. I was naive. I wanted to believe that when morning came, he'd apologize, that he'd be the man I had fallen in love with again. But he didn't. And now I was left questioning everything. As the night went on, I still couldn't shake the unease. What if he showed up at my mom's house? What if he came looking for me? What if he didn't stop calling? I had already made the decision to cut him off, to move on, but the fear lingered. The next day, my phone buzzed constantly. Calls. Texts. Voicemails, all from him. He was frantic. Where are you? When are you coming home? But I couldn't bring myself to respond. Not yet. I just needed space. And then he called my mom. I could hear his voice crackle through the phone. He sounded desperate, but my mom wasn't having any of it. She didn't want to talk to him either. She answered because I asked her to, but it was clear this was the end. I didn't even realize how much I had been relying on my mom until this point. She had been my lifeline, pulling me out of the chaos and giving me clarity. She made sure everything moved forward, step by step, with calm precision. She had become my protector, and I felt so incredibly lucky to have her by my side. But there was a part of me, a small part, that wished this was all some twisted dream. That it wasn't real. But it was. And now, I just needed to breathe. To rebuild my life. I wanted to put things off, to delay facing the harsh reality of it all. But my mom, my rock, gently reminded me of the consequences. What if you wait? She asked, her voice calm yet filled with urgency. What if he finds you? What if he hurts you? Or your son? Or anyone who's helping you? Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Of course she was right. How could I have been so naive? I'm ashamed to admit it, but I didn't fully realize just how much support I had. The love and strength of my family, the people who would stop at nothing to protect me, became clear in an instant. And wow, how lucky am I? A couple of you mentioned the danger of my ex finding out where I am, but my mom and brothers already had a plan in place. They called it round robing. If my ex found me at mom's, I'd run to my eldest brothers. If he found me there, I'd go to my younger brothers. No hesitation. No second guessing. They were all on the same page, ready to protect me at all costs. But let me tell you, none of this is my doing. None of it. It's all my family. They're the extraordinary ones here. The ones going above and beyond for me and my son. You all say I'm doing everything right, moving fast, being brave. But really, it's all thanks to them. They're the ones carrying the weight. Some comments questioned why I would turn to Reddit right away. And yes, I know, it's odd, I guess. But it's not for me. Growing up with LiveJournal, writing was my way of processing the chaos in my head. It helps me make sense of things. So, when I was lost in the storm of it all, I turned here, hoping to find some guidance. And you all came through. I was right to trust this community. Then there's the sudden change in my ex. What happened to him? What caused this? I've been wondering that every second. I know I don't want him in my life anymore, but now I'm worried. Someone suggested it could be a brain tumor, or maybe a psychotic break. It's a thought I can't shake. It's eating away at me. So, I reached out to his parents this morning. I told them I'd broken off the engagement, that I left. But they haven't responded. It's been hours. Days, maybe. I'm torn. Do I tell them he needs help? Do I suggest he sees a doctor? Would they even listen? Would he agree to go? I'm terrified of what comes next, but I'm lost as to how to bring it up to them. I need advice. On top of all this, I had a consultation with a lawyer today. But it's all still so much to take in. It doesn't feel real. This doesn't feel like my life. It feels like a bad teenage fanfiction. A twisted, horrifying version of one. Sorry for rambling again. I needed to update you all. Let you know that I'm listening. I'm taking notes from your helpful suggestions. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to keep my son's world as normal as possible. That's all I want. My mom took him for ice cream today so I could have a moment to breathe. A moment to check in with you all. And then, there's the awards. I can't even begin to express how humbled and grateful I am for them. Some of them, I had to click on to figure out what they meant, but the outpouring of kindness, it's overwhelming. I'm endlessly thankful for every message, every comment, every word of encouragement. It means everything to me. Now, as for my ex being served, it didn't go well. Of course it didn't. I had already blocked him on everything, but he still found a way. He posted a picture of his legal papers on Facebook, including my personal information. A mutual friend saw it and sent me a screenshot. It took me a moment to process it. But then, I knew what I had to do. I called the police. They made an incident report and told me I could pick up the paperwork the next day. They didn't arrest him. My mom had already secured me a lawyer, a shark, as she called him. The best of the best. I told my lawyer about the Facebook post, and without hesitation, he filed a motion for contempt of court. My ex had broken the ex parte order, and now he was threatening me and my son. Our original court date wasn't until next week, but the judge got us in early to deal with the violation. I showed up with my lawyer. No one else was allowed in due to COVID restrictions. I really wanted my mom there with me. But my lawyer, bless him, sat beside me, between me and my ex. He was my shield. He advised me to say as little as possible. Only answer the questions when asked, and answer them as briefly as possible. And so I did. The judge gave my ex a warning. If he so much as mentions me or my son again, he'd be put in jail for 24 hours for each violation. The judge also ordered him to pay my legal fees for the emergency hearing. By Friday, with the help of friends and family, we moved out of the house. My ex had to work that day, so we arrived with a police officer just in case. We took anything that was ours, my son's things, my things, and anything he could claim as his was left behind. The items we couldn't take went into storage. My mom had already arranged for secure, gated storage. She'd thought of everything. I can't thank her enough. My ex's parents read my messages but haven't responded. I don't know if they'll do anything. My lawyer said the official court date is still on for next week, and we don't know yet if my ex will have a lawyer. But the hearing should follow the same process as today's. He'll stay away from me. He won't be able to talk to me. I'll answer questions, but only when directed. And then there's the fear. The constant fear. People have messaged me telling me they've seen my post on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Some of you have found the state I live in. My ex. What if he finds it? What if he pieces everything together? I can't breathe just thinking about it. I haven't been able to keep up with every comment, every message. I'm so sorry. But I have to keep my son's life as normal as possible. He asks me every day, when are we going home? Where's Papa? It breaks my heart. He thinks it's just a long sleepover with Mimi, but it's not. It's so much more. I've warned his daycare. Everyone close to me knows that things are serious, but I haven't shared the details. It's been a long week. I'm exhausted. I keep looking over my shoulder, wondering if my ex is lurking around the corner. We've added extra locks to the doors. My mom's even started pricing cameras for the outside. My aunt has been trying to get her to try Ring for months, and now she's finally convinced. I'm sorry again that this update is late. It still doesn't feel real. But I have to keep swimming, right? My son loves Finding Nemo. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just swimming.